Oh, would you just look at that gorgeous book right there?
Yeah, what an amazing Buffy cover by George Jonti. And this is the big Overstreet price guide. This is one of those ones that they only make 1,000 copies of. And mostly they go to dealers or that one guy on eBay who happened to buy 45 copies and is selling all of them. This is the one I prefer. Eyesight, great. You're not dealing with squinting. There are fewer ads in this one. And also the fact that it lays flat on the table is absolutely great.
An upgrade from last year's spiral bound. This is the first square bound version, and it actually lies pretty flat. I enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. They had spiral bound for the last, 10 years or so, and I've used them, and they've been fine, but I had 1 year where the spiral was all off, and I ended up having to cut half the spiral to make it work.
Every spiral copy that I have, the pages are all torn out. And they're, and it's actually kind of nice too. Like, I get frustrated when they get loose, but at the same time, I use them like, all right, where's my X-Men? Oh, I have an X-Men paper over there of everything that I have,
right.
That I need to price and grade.
This ties in actually to a comment that we continue to get. Is this book still relevant? And
it's a good question.
And it really is, because I use it a lot. Tom uses it a lot. I mean, Tommy's using it enough that the pages are falling out of his copy.
Right.
So, yes.
But why is it relevant? Because the question is typically followed by a lot of the prices in here aren't reflecting what the current sales are showing on eBay and Heritage and other types of platforms.
Well, and absolutely, it is a print book. It is printed once a year. And even when we had Wizard magazine that was printed monthly, you would see things going up and see things going down. We know that the market moves faster than this once a year, but this is such a fantastic baseline. And what we're going to do today is try and explain to you why it's such a fantastic baseline and why it is still the Bible of the comic book industry.
You should like and subscribe the video now. Let's dive into it, because what is the Overstreet Price Guide? This is essentially the annual published guide for American comic books that sets the standard for the comic book market across the country and the world.
Yes, and right now we are in the 48th edition, which means this is the 48th year that they have produced this book in this format.
Started in 1970 out of just the need to document these changes in prices because comic books started to become more collectible. Robert Overstreet started this, and he's known in the market as a big-time comic book enthusiast, collector, and market dictator.
And even recently, with the fact that Gemstone Publishing is now publishing the Overstreet Price Guide, the president of Gemstone Publishing is Steve Geppi.
Yeah, he's somebody we should know. Who's Steve Geppi, Russ?
Steve Geppi is a very large name in the industry, actually. So Geppi owns Geppi's Entertainment Museum, which he had a fantastic comic book collection, owned in Action Comics #1. It's in Baltimore, right across the street from Camden Yards. If you're out there checking a baseball game, go see the museum. Steve Geppi used to have a distribution center, and throughout the late 80s and early 90s, he started purchasing up a lot of the other distribution centers and comic distributors all across the country.
There's not a whole lot of distribution centers. I only know of one.
The only one right now is Diamond Comics, which is owned by Steve Geppi.
Whoa! Okay, so wait a minute. The person who's in charge of the Overstreet is actually...
Yes, so the guy in charge of doing the comic book distribution right now is the one who's the president of the company that owns Overstreet. So understand that this is hand in hand with these new comics.
Interesting. After Steve bought Overstreet in 2003, actually tried to do some regular monthly publications to kind of keep everyone up with the comic market, but it wasn't successful.
No, it really wasn't coming out. And again, people like this for the guide that it is, and understand it is just a guide. It doesn't need to be up to the minute.
The first question I want to ask you, Russ, is how do you use this as a current brick and mortar shop owner?
It's a fantastic tool. People come into their collections all the time, and it's really nice to be able to sit down and go, okay, you brought in X, X, and X. This is here. Near mint would be this. Your grade is VG. I'm going to sell this for $20. So I'm going to offer you $10. I'm going to offer you $15, whatever, to be able to buy the collection. And I will always spot check it with, this is what the price guide says. But if you want to go to eBay, we can go to eBay as well. 95% of the time, we're right in spot with what eBay is. It's the more recent outliers. Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, all of those books spike. Rocket spikes, Gamora spikes. And we don't see that happen until the next year of this guide. But you're able to do the up to the minute on Comic Book Realm. You're up to the minute on comicspriceguide.com. You're up to the minute on eBay. Those three sites are where you're going to go to if you want something now, hot, new variants. But truthfully, this is the one that you really should be looking at if you're going to be getting a baseline for the vast majority of comics.
Something that every comic book dealer, buy, sell, trade enthusiast in this hobby needs to have on their tool belt. This is something that is, I mean, what would you say? percentage-wise, I mean, we can't figure this out based off of eBay, but I would bet to wager under 30% of what's in these books are actually even listed on eBay currently.
Probably. There's a massive amount of stuff in those books. I mean, not counting so much like the fact that there's Platinum Age or the Little Big Books.
Yeah, this starts Victorian age,
Right.
120 years ago. We're talking things that aren't even really considered comic books, but they are print and in the kind of the field, the ballpark.
And to me, having the Platinum Age, having the Victorian Age, having that older stuff, that's a window into the past, and that's the historical document. That's the thing that I like. There are articles in this book. There are things that delve deeper into why you should read or where comics came from, and I think that's a fantastic thing to be able to read and do. And even if you're not using the first 3 or 4 small sections of the book, you flip through these, and there are just definitely some things that you're like, wow, scarce, 12 copies known, and we're not seeing those sell. And like when CBSI makes a mention of honorable mention, it'll say Overstreet was 800, last eBay sale was 3,500, but there was only one of these listed in the last decade. Right. So it's not like Overstreet had any opportunity to go, oh, well, it's going up $50 a month for 3.5 years. Right. No, there's no baseline. You get what you get.
That's very well put. You mentioned that there's a lot of other useful tools within this book, such as other articles. Right. We have the Overstreet price guide advisors that all share insight. We know a couple of those people that are on there.
Right.
And you have things like glossary definitions that don't just go into detail about things like eye appeal, comic book dealer, or even specific definitions for like renownedly known collections.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. It'll talk about what the Mile High pedigree is. It'll talk about what a subscription crease is. It'll explain what a Mark Jewelers variant is. And these are things that, yes, going out on the internet and finding this information, it's more readily available than it used to be, but this is a concise place where you have all of that information. You can flip through the glossary and go, cool, here are the 270 comic book terms, and I know what foxing is now, rather than going, why does this word not mean anything to me?
My favorite couple pages in this book is something that I used in my early days of collecting when I first dove into this and read this through. And you told me too, when I first started collecting, you're like, know your Bible.
Right. Read it.
Study your Bible. Mm-hmm. Read it through. Read everything. Know your Action Comics. Know your ASM. Know your X-Men. Be familiar with those keys.
Because it's not just the major keys that you need to know. It's the fact that there are 35 other first appearances in that first 100 copies of Amazing Spider-Man. Right. And all of a sudden, if not the Vulture's in the movie, but you've got, I don't know, the Commuter is going to be, but something happens
you love that
in the movie.
Book, man.
I do. And all of a sudden, someone is going to go, all right, this spiked, this movie happened, this happened, this. And the fact that the industry is moving so fast right now, if you know, all right, I'm going to pull out first appearance of Cyttorak because it's in Doctor Strange number 44, because you already knew where it was, because it already said that in the Overstreet. It was a $3 book, but it told you it his first appearance.
For everyone who's complaining about that type of book not being reflective in here, this is the book that said it was his first appearance years ago.
Right. So you know that it's listed in there. You know that they mentioned it, and maybe it's not driving the market. Maybe it's only listed at $3 in here, but that's the information that you get. And from that information, we can glean where the market is going to go. And that's why this is a great place to just have a baseline.
I was mentioning some of the early pages that helped me as a collector when I first started out in this hobby. It's the 3-page spread of grade definitions. Mm-hmm. They go into great detail.
I think, honestly, if a lot of dealers read through the grade definitions, they would have to regrade all of their comics. Because if you eyeball something at a 6.5 and you go through and read and go, oh, well, a 3/4 of an inch tear is acceptable on this, and pen mark is acceptable on this, and an ink stamp and a name written.
Yeah, and you're good with this many inches. And
cool. It's actually an 8. I mean, it's really astounding how many things are allowed in some of these. And also, if it smells bad because it was stored wrong, it immediately goes down 2 grades. I mean, there are just things that you read this and understand, oh, that's why that person graded it the way it does.
Yeah, really eye-opening things. So I want to address the question now that we know the value of the Overstreet price guide. I want to address the question of how do you grade comics in 2018? I want to give a shout out to Arkham Comics Las Vegas, someone who actually plugged our channel, one of the first comic book podcasts to plug our channel when we were really, really small.
Yeah.
Liked our CGC video. Shout out, you do good work. He actually has a video about how he prices comics that I think is pretty spot on. He says that he uses the Overstreet as a guide. This is a base level. This is what he uses for everything kind of earlier than modern. You know, although there's a lot of useful modern information in here. I mean, this is updated every year.
Right.
What he suggests to do, and I want to hear your thoughts because this is kind of similar to how I price comics. I check the Overstreet. Sure. I always check the Overstreet because that's where you're going to find out details on the comic. Is there text on the comic? How many pages are in this comic book? Are there any minor appearances that we don't know about? Like, that's going to be in there. But if you want to get up-to-date prices on comic books that are spiking this week, well, I mean, one, you should be watching our Friday videos.
Yeah.
Shout out CBSI. But you can check eBay. That's where everyone's going to go. That's where a lot of the market and new and old collectors go. What he does is he checks his recent sales tab. And what he does is he checks the last 5 recent sales and averages the prices. Now, I think this is a good kind of idea. It's not always the best way to go about it, but that right there combined with your Overstreet is going to give you a rough estimate of what comic books are going for.
And that is good. And I like the information there. Understand that I do have people come in all the time and they don't know how to do that. They go in and they'll say, I have Howard the Duck #1. It's a $4,000 book. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I go on eBay and realize there's a 9.8 of Howard the Duck #1 that's multi-signed that has a sketch of Howard, all of these other things. And that one is $4,000.
Sure.
So yes, using eBay as your guide for the sales, but understanding that
you got to know your grades. You got to know everything else.
The grade's the important part. Yeah.
And a great way to know your grade, to know your comics, and to get a good understanding of what their value is, it starts right here.
Right.
Your Overstreet price guide, the Bible in the industry. I joke by saying that, but that is the term. You got to know the grade. You got to know the info on your comics. And the best way to start is right here. The Overstreet price guide comes out every year. It's affordable. And it's so much more than just a tool of approximate values from low grade to 9.2.
Yeah.
I want to know from the audience, how do you price your comic books? Put your answers in the comment section below.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe down below.
Yeah, we got a lot of content coming your way. And as always,
geek responsibly.
Nuff
said. Remember, you've got until the 15th of October to sign up for the mystery mail call. You're going to want to because there are quite a few books in there that are autographed. And I know because I got them autographed when I went to Comic-Con last month. Get on it. Get some books. Do it.